Hello and welcome everybody to this tutorial here today. And this tutorial today will cover a use case on how we can manage service contracts with tempo budgets for Jira Server. So my name here on the line today is Alexander Eck, and I'm working as a customer success manager for Tempo. So what can you expect from me or from the session here today? So first of all, this session is for all people that search for integrated Jira solutions to plan and track profitability, projects, accounts, customers, or teams. Um, like I have said here, or the topic of the session here today is we will cover a specific functionality of tempo budgets. This is how we can actually manage service contracts. And the idea that I'm going to show you here today, or the workflow that I'm going through, is adaptable for service contracts, but could also be adapted for project management as well, if you have at least a fixed budget for your projects, for example. So I'm going to present the session here with an audio and a screen share. So by now you should be able to see my screen and listen to my voice. And I'm going to be here for you for about 45 minutes, depending on how much I rush through this material here today. And I'm going to record the session, and you should be able, or you should receive a link to the recording by tomorrow. So you are able to submit your questions in the questions tab of the GoToWebinar control panel here on the right hand side, and I'm going to answer those questions at the end of this session here today. So what I'm going to tell you here today is, first of all, I'm going to start with some slides, and I will explain some tempo budgets concepts and basics so you are on the same page. So if you do not have if you're not familiar with tempo budgets at all, I will give you a slight introduction what you need to know in order to be able to follow my demo here later on today. And when I'm finished, I will go through a specific use case scenario. It's very basic, it's very simple. It gives you hopefully an idea how you're able to manage a service contract within tempo budgets. But this same methodology might also be adapted for other use cases, for example, for product or product development, for example. So what is tempo budgets overall? So it delivers the financial overview for Jira, and you are able to track planned versus actual costs, and also you're able to plan or to track planned versus actual revenue. So these are the most important things. And from your revenue and your cost, you can also track the profitability of your projects or customers or service contracts or whatever it is. Tempo Budgets offers a lot of customizable reports. It also generates a very good portfolio overview. So if you want to look at, for example, several service contracts at once, you can add them into a container or folder that we call portfolio and report on that level rather than on single projects or contracts. We also integrate a performance dashboard. That means you can add your tempo budget overview page on within the Jira dashboard. And tempo budgets also supports the earned value management methodology. So I will talk here today a lot of folios and portfolios. I already mentioned portfolios, but a portfolio, for example, within tempo budgets is a collection of folios. So what is a folio? So folio is the element of or the basic element of tempo budgets. So everything we set up in tempo budgets is a folio. Okay. So each time that I create a folio, I have three key elements that for a specific folio. So first of all, there's always a schedule. So this is always the start date and the end date, and I always have a scope. So the scope is always defined by a container of Jira issues, and I also always have costs on my folio. So the costs might be, let's see. So like I said, schedule start and end date, and the costs is determined by the effort on the Jira issues that are within the scope of my folio. So this is the basic that you need to know, and if you understand that concept, you can easily go on by building your customized folio that fits your business case. Okay, so I already mentioned portfolio structure. So a portfolio is nothing else than a container or a folder which contains one or more folios. So that helps you also to report on an upper level. And again, you can also nest portfolios within the portfolio. So this enables you to report on even a higher level. Okay, I do not want to have that any further, so I just really want to jump into my Jira instance and present the use case that I'm going to show you here today. And as you might see here, I have a web browser with my Jira instance. This is running on my local host, and we will see here the Tempo Budgets overview page. So for example, if you have Tempo Budget installed, you will see here the Tempo drop-down menu. And for example, I have also enabled other add-ons from Tempo, like Tempo Timesheets and Tempo Budget. So I will probably have some more many items that you have. But what we're going to cover here, look into, is the folio section and the portfolio section. So I hope that you got an understanding of what folios are, and these are manageable or managed here from that section below. So what I'm going to do here is to navigate to the folio section, and this will come up with the overview page of my folios. So I have, for example, a portfolio structure here on the left-hand side. This is nothing more or less than very similar to folder structure. So I have the option to create dynamic and static portfolios. This is a little bit out of the scope here today, but gives you maybe an idea on how you could possibly set up your folder structure in order to fit your needs. What you also need to know maybe is that the folio might be placed in one or more portfolios. So you can easily, for example, if you have a service contract, you could also, for example, place that into project development, for example. Then you would see that information from the right hand side here where this folio is located. So you have the option to locate a folio in more than one folder at once. Okay, so here on the left hand side we have the portfolio section, and here on the right hand side we see always the folders that are placed within those specific portfolio that I have selected here on the left hand side. So before I go and start on creating folio, I will also use here something in order to define the scope of my folio. And this is what I'm going to use here are accounts. So we are so if you have Tempo installed, timesheets or Tempo budgets, whatever, you also get the account section here, shipped with all of our core add-ons. And within this section, you see a lot of accounts here, and I would like to explain that to you what I'm doing here. So I will basically use an account as the base for my service contract. Okay, so that's how of course you could do that another way, but this is a way on how it makes it easy for me to create my folio and to define the scope of my service contract. So you will see here a lot of accounts in that list, and all these customers assigned to a specific customer. And I have already created a service contract or an account that we look into, and this is an account for Springfield City. So I have a customer which is Springfield City here, and as you might see, for this specific customer I have two accounts created, one for a specific project which is a marathon taking place there, and another one is for my support. Okay, so I have created an account here which is Springfield City Support. And what I also do, I just jump into that here to give you some idea of that. So when you look into the configuration here, I am linking this to one of my projects. So I have a project here, service and support. So, and this is what I'm going to show you in a minute. I hope this will make you to help you to understand that. So this makes it possible to select my account when I create an issue. So for example, now when I am creating a new issue that I will do here for now, I will, for example, now pick my service and support project. I will pick here a service request. So I assume my customer has phoned me and he wants to get some support to support his hosted websites. Just like so. Just I say here in 2018. Okay. I can also assign that to my support team. And here is my account field. So the account field is another, so you can enable, or you should enable the account field here as a Jira custom field to your Jira issue screen. And now you're able to select the account. And I am selecting the account here that I was just looking at before. So it's a Springfield City Support. So as you might see, you might also have several accounts. So this will also help you to split your service requests or your service tickets into multiple accounts here or multiple contracts. I select my Springfield City Support account, and this I will keep this as or the account will basically track what is the scope of my folio that I'm going to use later on. So I can now here also estimate now. So I have an estimate of 50 hours, let's say so, and just click the create button. Okay, so I have created now a Jira issue, and based on that account, Springfield City Support. Okay. So, and now what I'm going to do next is I'm going back to my folios overview page again. And now I'm going to create, because I have just created a Jira issue, and now I really want to track my plan and track my costs and also the revenue that I generate from the service contract and so on. And I'll show you how you do that within Tempo budgets. So first of all, I of course need to create my folio. And now here is what I have told you before, what is going to define the scope of my folio. And here I use my account section. Okay. So I use my account section. Okay. And what I would like to track. I of course want to track cost and revenue. I want to know what is that service contract costing me, and what kind of revenue, or what is the revenue that I can create from this service contract. And based on the cost and the revenue, I can of course also track the profitability. Okay, the profitability is nothing else than the revenue that I generate minus the cost that I have spent on that contract. So I do that and click next. Okay, now I give that folio a specific name. So I just say here Springfield City Support 2018. Okay. I give it a start date. I will do some data in the past, so I assume they have called me sometime in July and want the contract to be started the 1st of August until the end of the year. Okay. So now I'm selecting here the accounts. So this is the Springfield, and as you have seen before, I have two accounts allocated to that specific customer, but I select my support account. Where do I want to place that? I want to place that here in 2018, not product development. Yes, so service contracts 2018. Angel is my project lead, and I do not want to specify a specific. That's low budget, so it's really low. Okay, so I have now created a service contract for Springfield City. And as you also might see, for example, this is maybe one kind of how you can manage or look at your service contracts for specific periods, just to place them into folder for your financial years. For example, that is one way in order to do that. Okay, so I have created here my Springfield City support folio, and now I'm going to open that in the next in the next in another folio. So okay, um, and as you see here, for example, you see, of course, my basic data is not populated anymore, and we are going to populate that now within a couple of minutes, and that will also make clear for you that this is a really easy job for you to set up. And once you've set it up, you can easily copy the configuration and manage your service contracts very easily. So the first thing that we notice here, the progress is, of course, I have already finished 21 working days because I have entered the 1st of August as the start date. Okay, I haven't finished anything yet, but what I will notice here that I have one issue within my uh, within my within my scope of my folio. So when I go to the issue navigator, I will always see here that this issue now is placed as in the scope, and this is because of this issue is linked to my service contract. So if I, and we can also do that later on, if I create another issue, it will also be here. So as you have seen, I have a remaining original estimate of 50 hours. So that's what Tempo Budget is telling me. This is the basic configuration, but what you could also do from here is go to the configuration tab of Tempofolio and change the basic settings here. So if you have, for example, multiple issues on the same contract, so you could, of course, skip the original estimate field and have a basic contract here, and change the completion ratio or the fixed to based on a fixed total number of worked hours, and change that to 50 hours. So these are the two options that you have. So still I have 50 hours to work left on that service contract here. Okay, so what I need to do next. So the first thing that I need to so there are several things that I need to do, and we can go in the correct order here, what Tempo Budget is suggesting me. So you see here on the top right, you see different tabs. You see the overview tab, the staff tab, the cost tab, the revenue tab, and the report tab. So and I will go or I will start with the staff tab, and this will, for example, tell me here who's going to work on that specific specific folio here. So I have some staff members that I can add to my folio here. So I could easily add a tempo team. So for example, there's one way in order to do that. So I have, for example, my service and support team. So there are three staff members. So I assume, for example, they are maybe working up to let's say 10% of their time working on that specific service contract, for example. Okay, so that will definitely tell me here. I mean, that's a little bit too much. So I could, for example, also go here and change that to 5%. But this is just for, it doesn't really matter how much, because the most important thing is that you put all your staff members here on that specific in that section, because only those staff members that are added here are also tracked as actual costs. Okay, so the next thing that I do is I'm going to navigate to the cost section. So both the cost section and the revenue section are built up in a very similar way. So you always see here on the left-hand side, there are three sections: the summary section, the planned section, and the actual section. So it's always starting with the summary section, for example. And for example, the only thing that you would notice here is the projections based on known future costs. So that's actually, if all my people are working according to what I have scheduled them before, I would end up with a cost of 7,830. But I'm not really looking into that number for now. That might be a number for another use case if I have that a little bit more realistic setup here. So I will go to the plan section, and now I'm going to plan my 50 hours that I have actually estimated on my contract. So therefore, I could go here and go to plan a human resource, and I say, for example, here, just want to plan some support. Let's say here I have support engineer. I could, of course, have 5 or 3 or 4 support engineers. I would just want to replace or plan for one, and then later on, it doesn't really matter who's working on that. Okay, so I just say here folio start date and end date, and I am going to plan for my 50 hours. Okay, so I have, and this is going to be here 5.78%, and I'm going just to plan my cost here. So I have a planned cost according to my 50 hours, and I assume that the hours are spread evenly over the time. But if that is not the case, so if you spend, for example, more hours in December than now in August, you could also adapt that in for that case in order to add these costs or plan these costs twice instead of a single one like I did. So you might also, of course, also plan some other stuff, like for example, you could not plan a resource, but if you might, for example, plan other costs. For example, you might say here, for example, some travel expenses. Okay, then I have here travel, for example, and we just say, for example, I assume we have $500 per month, and we could also do that recurring, just for example, on a monthly basis, repeat once every month, and starts on for the start date. Or I could also say the 1st of, let's say the 1st of September. Okay, plan that as a recurring cost. And here you could also, of course, add other planned costs if they are software costs or any other expenses that you need to charge to your customer and that you have estimated in your service contract. Okay, so now I have some planned costs, and we can now, for example, look into our overview page, and I will see here how much planned costs I have in total. And the dark green column gives me an indication of what I have planned so far. And here on the right hand side, now I also see here my my actual costs, and as we see, or as I see, is I do not have any actual costs so far because I haven't spent any time on my service contract so far. Okay, so if we would do that, for example, we could, but I will jump to that a little bit later. So first of all, I want to go to the revenue section. Okay, so from the revenue section, as you also see here, that is everything is to zero here. My revenues, and you might see here this is the actuals both on the projected total for my planned costs and my known costs here based on the stuff that I have added to the folio. Again, when I have very similar setup here, like I said. So from the revenue section here, again, I have these three tabs: the summary tab, the planned, and the actual. So, for example, I could go in here to the plan tab, and I can now here, for example, plan a revenue. Okay, I have contacted my customer and we made a deal. So we had, for example, revenue agreed on to pay for in October, let's say so. And this is let's say sales here. So I have, let's say, 3,000 on October, and I'm going to plan to charge him for the end of October. Okay, and another one I could do here, say, for example, I could, for example, say here, just end of year, another 3,000, and I'm going to charge him by the end of the year. So that's actually my plan. Okay. Okay. So now I have planned 6,000 here as a planned cost. And when I now go back here to my overview page, then this would look very similar to this. So I have now here my plan section and my actual revenue. Okay, so this is my setup, and now I want to start in or to hack in some data here. So I assume here, for example, this is my support ticket, and I assume now that one of my team members, some of my support, has worked on that contract. So what she's actually doing. So just say here, for example, I log some time on that, and not Taylor, but I would say here, for example, Angel. He has logged some time. Just enter 4. And I would say here, for example, he worked on that last week for 4 hours, for example. Okay, so now he has logged 4 hours, and the reason why I did it last week is because I want to see that number on my folio. So when I go now to my overview page, I would also see here now that I have here my actual costs. So now all my numbers are generated. I also see that I have burned 8% of my budget that I have. So, but I could also very easily see from here that I'm behind my planned costs. So of course I haven't generated any revenue so far, but I could also very easily then go in here and just like say, for example, from the actual one, just to show you, or just pre-sales something. So I just say something here, and I assume, for example, that I have generated a revenue, let's say last Friday. Okay. And then I would also, for example, now get here a specific number that would definitely tell me how much I have generated, and it would also populate now here the profit, or the generated profit of my